Visual Arts Center, named after Norberly Downey Gross, who was a pillar in our community. So really we want to bring, build community through the art space, because that's our motto. And so we have this Newport Community Gallery. There's a rotating exhibit. We feature artists, emerging, established. One of our favorite artists here tonight as well is Marjorie Wallace. So let's shout her out. She's amazing too. She's a great support for the center as well. So that's a little bit about us. We have classes on the third floor. Here we have our another permanent exhibit space, the Anderson Johnson Gallery. So if you haven't checked that out, please check out the Anderson Johnson Gallery as well. It's the only permanent exhibit featuring his artwork in the world. And then we also have rental spaces on the first floor. So a little bit about us. My name is Liddy Johnson, and I'm the program supervisor here, and I'm head of the visual arts and also the curator as well. And I'm going to introduce this exhibit and then introduce our artists. So, face value. In face value, oil painter Justin White implores the viewer to consider human value and emotion as expressed in the human experience through portraiture. These portraits include self-portraits, portraits of historical figures, pop culture characters, and those of white loved ones. The latter include portraits of the artist's son, demonstrating artistic awe and wonder as he fixates on various aspects of nature. Justin says, if my work can capture a likeness as well as celebrate and express the value of the life behind it, I consider that the definition of success. Face value will be on display this entire month, so please come out and view the exhibit for the rest of the month as well, and really take in the artwork and the features of the artwork, and the artist is going to talk about it as well. So we're going to have him speak about the artwork, and then afterwards, if you have any questions, feel free to ask your questions. Justin, come on up.
Well, thank you for being here. I know some of y'all used to be speaking for like 40 minutes. This ain't that. This will be way more brief and succinct. But before I get going on anything, I just want to say thank you to Cindy, thank you to the Downey Grove Center, everybody from security to reception, all throughout the building has been so welcoming. And thank you. It's been an awesome experience, and thank you guys for sharing this experience tonight. Also wanted to say a special honor to my mom and my dad who are here. They never turned their nose up to their eldest firstborn son having a passion for art. Matter of fact, my mom used to call me her little Rembrandt, and when I was a teenager, obsessed with comic books, drawing ill-proportioned women, they just let me keep rolling. But also, most special thank you to my wife, who has been putting up with the grind and supports this rekindled passion for the past few years. It was 2023 when we kind of built out a space in the garage between our tools and the drink fridge, where I could just go every night to paint, and it's something I've returned to again and again and again, and here we are 3 years later, and this is the fruit of it. So as we are here, though, thank you everybody who showed up tonight. This is a memory, being here with these faces and this art, that I won't let go of anytime soon. So thank you for being here. But when it comes to memories that I know I won't forget anytime soon, there is a memory about 10 years ago now that took place on the other side of the planet in a hotel restaurant in New Delhi, where I was holding my son who was 17 months old, and we had him for about 48 hours at that point. And I was holding him in this restaurant. He's got these piercing eyes where like the pupil and iris almost blend together because they're so dark brown and they're so intense, and he's looking at stuff, he gets these dimples in his eyebrows, and he was so focused. And I was thinking, what is this kid looking at? Like, does he see a ghost? Or, you know, I didn't know what he was looking at. I looked over my shoulder and I realized he was probably looking at a big screen TV for the first time. Just fixated on this thing, enthralled by this television. He was just playing the news, but he was so fixated. And I'm here to report that nearly a decade later that was just the beginning of Raj's love affair with screen time. He is unique in a lot of ways that I'll talk about, but he shares that with a lot of kids his age. He loves his screen time. But he doesn't just fixate on screens, he fixates on all kinds of things, as you see in the paintings tonight. Because Raj is diagnosed with what would technically be called institutional autism, but in more general terms, he simply lives life on the spectrum. And because of that, Raj will, what they call, hyperfixate on some things. Now, that's a technical term that can speak to a deep dive interest in subject matter, which for Raj, as you can probably tell, is animals and zoology. He just found out Zootopia 2 exists this week, and he's all about it. He's watching it again and again. But for him, hyperfixating can also speak to a prolonged, all-consuming focus on an object, on a person, on a thing. For Raj, it might be a flower, it might be a dandelion, it might be an insect, it might be a bee, but he locks in whatever the object. It might be a toy like that rhino toy over there. But the thing about Raj is he does not live rushed. He doesn't rush to capture the moment and keep it moving. He doesn't reach like I often do for my phone and my camera to take a picture and keep it moving. No, he simply lets himself be captivated. And it's made me realize over time just how little I've been letting myself be captivated by beauty. Because we live in a camera-ready culture. I don't know if y'all know, we as humanity took 2 trillion photos last year as a collective. And I don't think we understand what a trillion is. 2 trillion photos means 5 billion pictures per day, 4 million per minute, 100,000 per second. And I bet collectively we go back and look at like a dozen of them after the fact. But that means we live with these fidgety fingers that results in this fidgety focus that sometimes can miss the beauty around us. But Raj's hyper-fixation has encouraged me to fight for a healthier fixation. I celebrate his ability to focus in these paintings because he's schooled me in this. He's inspired me to work on the ability to be still and truly behold beauty. And quite simply, that's the only way to paint it, right? Painting starts first and foremost with slowing down and paying attention. But painter or not, it's an ability that we should regain and fight for. Because if we're honest, we're surrounded by a whole lot of ugly in our culture. So much so that the word doom scrolling has become synonymous with just scrolling our social media feeds. Not to be over dramatic, there's good stuff on our feeds too, but you might be scrolling and there's a wild concoction where you might be watching a video of a wedding 1 second, and then violence the next, and then a funny cat video the next, and then somebody being knocked out the next. And what happens is, when you see something that triggers you or is upsetting, that neural response lingers through that next video that you comment LOL on. You're still feeling that response. It stays with you. So over time we become numb, and not just in some poetic sense. Like our brain's response physiologically and chemically lessens over time because your brain is avoiding the feelings of anguish and despair. So that's the bad news. But the good news is our brains are malleable. They can be reshaped and retrained. And again, Raj is this beautiful picture of this because he has grown and healed so much over the past 10 years he's been with us. And a lot of times recently I'm asking myself, is his ability to take in beauty, has that unlocked so much of his healing? And why do I ask that? Well, because for one, I've been reading this book called The Art Cure by Daisy Fancourt this spring, which just points to so much recent research about how art is healing. But you can go back centuries to the 7th century BC, where Old Testament prophets like Isaiah were prescribing beauty for ashes. That's a phrase I think about often as a painter and an artist, is beauty for ashes. And today's science is showing it's more than just a poetic description, it's reality. Again, I've been reading that book, and it's 250 pages about how science is catching up to this Old Testament prescription of beauty for ashes, because it's healing. The arts are healing. They prescribe it for everybody from stroke victims to cerebral palsy patients to those wrestling with depression, and it's shown incredible results in the short and long term, both treatment and prevention. And while I personally may paint, the art speaks to a wide variety, from writing to poetry. We got some spoken word artists in the building tonight, to dancing, even arranging flowers for a loved one. But I also think of a recent study published in the Washington Post that took place in a setting just like this, where they studied people that looked at art for 20 minutes and how that affected their health. In 20 minutes, their stress hormone cortisol dropped by like 25%. Their inflammation dropped, heart rhythms relaxed. But here's the thing, they didn't just glance at beauty, they were beholding it. They looked for at least 20 minutes of all this art. But another survey recently was done by the Met Museum and the Chicago Museum of Art. These are two of the biggest museums in the nation, and they measured the average time that people spent looking at these paintings in these museums, these masterpieces. Anybody want to venture a guess what the average time somebody spent looking at a painting was? What's that? 3 seconds? You're not that far off. It was 20 seconds. Like 20 seconds, you're keeping it moving. Right? You're just glancing and you're keeping it moving. And again, these stats show why. When I talk about Raj's fixation, I almost don't want to use the word hyper. Because he's really just showing us how to focus. And it's jarring because his focus muscle is so much stronger than my own at times. And for me personally, that's not a disability, that's a demonstration. A demonstration on how to behold beauty. And for me as a painter, learning to be captivated and mindful is the only way to paint well. It's what I hope to drive home with all those paintings of him back there. But it also begs the question that informs some of my other portraits that are here tonight on these walls, which is what other things? What other people groups, what historical figures are we pushing to the side or labeling or even demonizing that are beautiful? Right? We live in a culture where we marginalize and can dehumanize entire people groups, where flesh and blood, right, is turned by social media into lifeless avatars. But portraiture, I think, helps us behold humanity again. Right? It puts a frame around somebody and says, this person is worthy of your attention. Whether it's for 20 seconds or 20 minutes, portraits usher the viewer into beholding somebody else in their humanity, and there's power in that. Because again, in our post-truth society where we all live in our separate algorithms, so sometimes it's so hard to get anybody to believe anything. But to behold something, especially behold something beautiful, I think it's truly one of the gifts of the creative arts. Whether again it's cinema or song, poetry or painting. Right? And it's why I lean into portraits as a celebration of our humanity. And I'll close with this. Man, no one said, find things beautiful as much as you can. Most people find too little beautiful. And that's good life advice. And again, that's life advice that doctors and scientists would now echo. Find some beauty because it's healing. And it's advice that echoes all the way back again to those Old Testament prophets who prescribed beauty for ashes. So tonight, if you are a creative, if you are one of these poets or other artists in the building that I see, keep creating. Because our world has lots of ashes and it needs lots of beauty. And I know we've got, again, spoken word artists, other artists, just keep creating. And while it's intensely personal, man, keep making it public. Because sharing it loves your neighbor. Science is showing it's literally giving your neighbor life to take it in and observe it. So again, thank you for letting me share these creations tonight of so many loved ones, so many figures. Again, it's a memory I'm not going to forget anytime soon. I'm going to hold on to it. So hopefully, my hope tonight is as you look at the art, all the science I just talked about applies. And you go home a little less heavy, a little more light, with a little more life. But bless you all for being here. And you can, we got a little setup here. You ain't got a little, you can create. So if you got the itch, you can create something with those mini canvases. I'm gonna set out a scavenger hunt where if y'all knock those out, I'm feeling generous. The first 2 people or couples that knock all those out, you can get a print. But otherwise, we're just gonna hang out, eat the food. But before we do all that, does anybody have any questions? Yes, Cindy.
Can you explain that piece behind you?
Yeah, this piece behind me. So I love portraiture. And especially with self-portraits, sometimes you look at yourself in the mirror like, man, I wish I had smaller ears, right? I wish I had a different looking nose. So you begin to make edits on different pieces. To where eventually, if you're getting graded, you can get a little graded because you didn't capture the likeness or the truth of what you look like. And so there's a hip hop lyric where I'm gonna forget it. But one thing about the men that are controlling the pen that write history, they always seem to white out their sins. And that is what inspired this painting. And a lot of the erasure of historical figures who, yes, it was hard times. Yes, it was times we probably don't want to look back on because it makes us uncomfortable. But the lives they lived, in spite of that, and the strength they showed, and the courage they showed, is beautiful. Right? And so, yeah. And I just believe, if you don't like your nose, guess what? You're still made in God's image and you're beautiful. Right? We are all beautiful, and it's the same as capturing the truest essence of our history. So a lot of these figures were erased from either the internet or plaques, from Ira Hayes to Sitting Bull to Bigfoot to the man with the scourge back, Jackie Robinson, Harriet Tubman, all around, just a lot of figures that were pulled and erased. So just to, again, you put a frame on something, like, oh, we should consider this. So that was what I was hoping to do with the paper. named Steph, where she's on that couch dressed in orange. Means a lot to just paint her. And this one of Raj flying through the air is based on a John Bellion song called Don't Shoot, where the lyrics really kind of resonate with really any parent, but definitely especially with parents, where like, don't come at my kid. Being very protective. So yeah, I mean, there's so many pictures of family, but those definitely mean a lot.
Which is your most recent piece, and what's also fascinating you closest to you?
Well, the first question, the most recent, is the one right closest to me next to the window over there, where it's like two of me. We've had a wild last half year. Lots of talks with therapy. We spent December in the hospital with Raj. We didn't know how it was going to turn out. We spent a week on a ventilator. So just a lot of conversations with therapists about anxiety and like, oh, that's PTSD. And conversations about portrayals in movies. So there's actually a movie called Fury, where Brad Pitt's character early in the movie like kneels next to a tank, and you can tell he's like having an anxiety attack, and he gathers himself and he gets back up. But it's kind of what that post is based on. So I know I spend a lot of time in scripture, and it talks a lot about not just protecting our heart, which is like what I think we run to a lot. It's like, no, I want to protect my heart. I want to feel those hard things, those maybe ugly emotions, but it also says to pour your heart out. So that's why I'm in therapy, right? That's why we spend time in prayer and offer that up to God. So that's just a lot of what that was resting. And what was your second question, sorry?
I said, what's fascinating you most right now?
What's fascinating? My next muse, honestly, I'm working on everything in Raj. But I like the concept of him. He loves to blow bubbles. He's always loved to blow bubbles. Even before we realized, like, oh, that's actually really good for him regulating, to take deep breaths. And he loves to blow bubbles as big as your head. And he's actually really good at it. He can blow bigger bubbles than I can. But anyways, he sits on the steps and does it all the time. You see it there, you see it over there. But it's also, I like the way it incorporates a lot of color. Because when light hits a bubble, you see the rainbow. So I won't mess with that. That's my news. Returning to Raj, which surprises nobody, especially my wife. Stephanie and Warrington.
How old were you when you first started to identify with being an artist?
That's a good question. I think, definitely my mom recognized it before I did. I was just doing finger paints, and she was like, oh, there's a foreground and a background here. And I'm like, I'm just slinging finger paints. But she was like, oh, that's when she started calling me her little Rembrandt. So she recognized it before I did. And then my teenage years, I was like, I'm gonna be an artist. And I was convinced I was gonna be a comic book artist. I was gonna draw for Marvel. You know, back then they were making, Jim Lee made 7 figures drawing comics. And then Marvel went bankrupt. So I was like, all right, let me pivot. Now they're back. The movies have, but yeah, that caused that.
Is it difficult painting or portraits, and then are you able to just not paint and how you know that exhibition like this kind of puts it also
Yeah, usually the muse kind of informs it. Like, that's called Fury Drives into Camp. So the scene where Brad Pitt kneels, that's the song that's playing in the background. Or a lot of them are just named after songs like Don't Shoot. It's named after the song Don't Shoot. This painting back there, where Steph and I are vampires, is based on a song called If We Were Vampires. So yeah, a lot of times it's based on whatever the muse is. This is called improper ideologies because that's what they called it when they wiped it off the internet, is those are improper ideologies. So, yeah, very like albatrosses after the movie Albatross. But yeah, usually the music forms the title. Other times it's something boring like Autistic Called Caterpillar. Number 1, 2, and 3. Anybody else? If there's nobody else, again, thank you. We're here till 8, right? We can hang out. There's plenty of food. Eat the food. Make something if you feel the itch. There's prints over there. Again, I'm about to put that scavenger hunt out, so if you want to mess around, do that, get a free print, do that as well. There's also a lot of incredible people. So talk to some folks, meet some cool people. I've already met a couple cool people here tonight. So thank you for being here.
have an open mic on Tuesday. Is that David? Hi, nice to meet you. I've said your word. Nice to meet you. Okay. But yeah, please eat, purchase some prints, support the arts, and make some art yourself here as well. And talk more to the artists. He's here for tonight, so talk to him. Thank you guys.